What's the current sort of landscape looking like for the Indian education system? How is it laid out? What are the challenges, and what are the interesting things that are happening in this landscape?
I think we are going through a very interesting transition, right? Like if you look at both undergraduate and the higher sort of education kind of things, there is some churn, there is some movement. For example, I recently read that about 50% of engineering seats in Maharashtra now go empty, and like engineering used to be this aspirational thing 10, 15 years back, and because there are no economic outcomes that people can now see out of that degree, the demand has definitely gone down. I also know of colleges shutting down their mechanical departments, civil departments, chemical departments, and only focusing on electronics and computer science. Especially when it comes to the engineering side of things, right? Like there is a lot of churn. If you look on the medical side, the competition is only going up. I think there was a recent Ken or Morning Contest article on the number of people taking NEET and how it has going up. So there is definitely something there at undergraduate level where um, the engineering medical side of things are seeing some new trends, and I think people are also opening up to new career choices. People who are pursuing education abroad, writing SATs, and even for undergraduate going outside, that number has been steadily climbing up. So at undergraduate level, those are some of the trends you could say are there. At higher graduation or a higher education level, again, uh, I think because one degree is not sufficient for many reasons now, right? Like it might not get you the right kind of educational compensation. It might not get you married. There are so many reasons, but the master's degree or the second degree, so as to say, is becoming even more important. And I don't think people are satisfied with one degree, most people. Now, what is very interesting is just like we have this debate of India versus Bharat within the startup ecosystem, and like companies will say we are building this for Bharat. Our understanding of last 18 months is even within education system there is India versus Bharat, right? Like so, if you go to IIT, IIM, and a few of these institutions, वो India है, and then there is Bharat. Like we were recently talking to owner of a a famous university, and he basically said that Aditya, या हमारे यहाँ पे जो लोग आते हैं उनका तो aspiration बहुत simple है, मतलब they are not aspiring for some multi crore, like they're not aiming to get into the newspaper saying iska Google में 1 crore का job लग गया, right? Like their aspiration is, yeah, I want a job that pays me well so that I can sort of support my family, hope to pay my dues and then get to some nice place in life. So the aspirations themselves are on a spectrum, so as to say, right? And that spectrum, I think, towards the lower end starts at something like 5 lakh rupees, and if you go the top of the higher education hierarchy, the aspiration there is something like 1 crore or something like that, right? And but it is a power law distribution. Like you will find most of the people in that 5 to 10, 12 lakh bracket, right? Like that is the first aspiration for millions and millions of people. In fact, if you look at income tax data, there are only 80 lakh people, salaried people who make more than 10 lakh. Oh, it's government, like you have your government employees, you have all of these people included there. So imagine the number of people. Very, my sense is not more than 2, 3 million actually. Even salaried people make more than 10 lakh rupees, and that's a scary number to think about. Like 20, 30 lakh, and assuming a four-person family household, about 1 crore people uh, who you can truly sort of say are resistant to inflation or can have decent lifestyles. I mean, if you just look at it from a Twitter bubble perspective. So this is how we look at the overall landscape, right? Like this churn at undergraduate level, this search for a more cost-effective or return on investment kind of education, and then at higher education level again. In fact, if you look at the NIRF rankings that recently came out, I don't know 2022, but 21, I definitely remember that the average salary out of an MBA degree quickly falls to 10 lakh rupees the moment you cross the top 15 or 16 or 20 colleges. And those colleges collectively serve about 5,000, 7,000 people. But then you look at MBA, there are 3 lakh people who are doing MBA. So the question I'm sure everyone will ask if they look at that data is what happens to the rest of the 2,90,000 people who are anyway spending about 5, 10 lakhs on their
I'm gonna go back to your initial point of the engineering colleges, right? We, I think all of us sort of grew up in that same time period of 2005s when we were entering colleges, and that's where we had so many engineering colleges that came up with literally just one building, right? So these were colleges set up as pure play businesses because there was so much demand because everybody wanted to become an engineer. But what happened because of that is we got an the end product of that was people with massive skill gap, right? Even a mechanical engineer couldn't actually do anything related to mechanical engineering. I still remember I was in the US. One of my friends who had graduated from a decent college in Bombay in computer science came to US for masters in computer science and did not know how to code in C++, which was the base language at that point in time, right? So that those 5, 10, 15 years of these colleges just making money, we obviously had on one spectrum the IIPMs of the world, which were just pure play scams, to other colleges which were there, which were decent but had students coming out with no real skills, and that resulted in Infosys hiring everybody and saying that we are going to train you in JavaScript, we are going to train you in whatnot, and make you employable in some way or fashion. But now that shift is happening, right? It's not possible to keep feeding millions of people to Infosys and TCS and say that, hey, take them and build a services organization. Now that shift is happening, I can see why the engineering college demand is going, especially when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 engineering colleges, because people have realized that you don't really get necessary skill sets to actually build a career out of that. You have to build a career post that. um, that brings me to the question. I was reading something about the massive gap in the medical college infrastructure in India, where people are going to Ukraine, people are going to China, people are going to so many other countries to get medical degrees, and we don't have the necessary infrastructure in India to actually support these students a good level medical degree. Medical engineering is slightly different in the sense that you can't fake medical skills, right? Engineering, you can go by 4 years without actually learning anything. But how big a problem do you think is the infrastructure in India, in the sense that do we just not have good quality institutions, and do we have the teachers and the faculty that's required to actually support the kind of population that there is in India? Do you think that's where the problem lies, or do you think there's just a lack of product market fit in terms of good institutions haven't come up? Once they come up, they'll find the demand necessary.
Yeah, so I think in my time over the last 5 6 years, I have worked across primary school education. I've had a good sprint in high school education, helping students while they're in high school. I've also worked with people in colleges. I've taken a few classes for 11, 12 standard students on the side, and now are into post whatever postgraduate education, if one may call it so. And my biggest learning has been that it's a systemic rot, right? In a country wherein you have a primary school class wherein there's one teacher teaching students, right from first grade to the fourth grade in one room, right? One teacher teaching multiple subjects across, grades in one room. If that's the sort of condition in which people are groomed, of course when they hit when they hit college or high school or whatever, uh, uh, there's going to be big fat fundamental gaps in their understanding, in their motivation, in their ability to take in newer information and actually apply it, do something with it, and so on. So I think we're against a very very big problem, right? And it's a very systemic problem. And I think you also mentioned about hospitals and doctors and so on, right? I think when it comes to healthcare, which indirectly leads us to education, right? Quality of doctors, number of doctors, all of that. I think massive supply side problems, not enough good teachers who are manning the ranks at primary schools, at high schools, which effectively means that if and only if you're self motivated, do you come out with flying colors and like become that Sharma ji ka beta ya beti. Those who do not have motivation are probably left uh, on their own to whatever, right? Like figure it out for themselves on the job market.
The other thing is, I mean, this when I did my internship at Planning Commission way back in 2012, there was this overall policy push to increase GER, gross enrollment ratio, at undergraduate level and postgraduate level. But I think that expectation that everybody should go to college, that's itself, I find it weird, right? Like, because especially in a country like India, like, I mean, why are we even sending people to shitty engineering colleges or shitty BCom colleges or shitty arts colleges when there is obviously no skill development in the first place? There are no economic outcomes coming out of it. And if you take that old, age old concept of one prasthashram, I think we have actually superimposed that on our 17-year-olds. कि 4 साल जाके भाई थोड़ा आराम कर लो, right? Like these are best years of your life, and you come out of that. Then there is another sort of this UPSC and whatnot waiting for you, where you waste another few years of prime years of your life. So I mean, it is just blows my mind, right? Like
Why do you think that's
the
happening though, Aditya? Is it at some point? I think it's more for the parents than for the child. It's that social stigma. बच्चे ने कहाँ से पढ़ाई करी है और कहाँ से पढ़ाई करी है is obviously when you're in tier one. That's when you show that off. And if you're not in tier one, you just show कि कौन सी डिग्री है. बच्चा इंजीनियर है, बच्चा MBA करा हुआ है, right?
I don't think that I don't think that is. I think the overall problem with education is the long feedback loops, right? Like, so, for example, a parent would not know at, like, when their kid is 17 years. Because right now takes about 4 6 years for that to become a productive adult or a productive citizen of the country, and there is just lack of awareness. Like, parents also don't know stuff, right? Like, so they are going by what their peers are saying or what some local consultant is telling them कि ये कर लो तो set हो जाएगा. So I think this feedback, there is no easy solution,
Yeah,
but the fundamental problem is the feedback loops, right? Like, and that is also a problem for good institutions, by the way. For you to build your reputation as a good institution, it takes number of years, which means you need upfront capital, you need that patience, you need all of that to actually get to a place where people start trusting you,
yeah.
right? And uh, so I actually don't have any easy solutions, but I think all of these are, like, it's just a multivariate problem, so as to say, right? Like, there is problem at a school level, there is then this problem of quality education at undergraduate level, then there is this whole divide of what aspirations are served for the top 1% versus where the rest of the 99% are.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned about parents, right? I think it's important to acknowledge. I mean, we say this in joking a lot of times. Kare, in the end, it's all about the marriage market and what the marriage market values. Now that's like a running joke on Twitter. IIT, I am Shadi, whatever, Fang Shadi, whatever the case is. But I think that's a real deal, right? But in a society that is reluctant to discuss money matters in the open, the best proxy that we have come up with is your education. This person is IIM, IIT, BITS, NIT, whatever, ISB, right? These have ended up becoming proxies for prosperity. कि if the person ये इस मंदिर की घंटी बजाई है तो that means this person is probably doing well in life. I don't have to bother asking about the specifics, right? And down the rung, down the hierarchy is just good old college education, right? I think uh, 20, 30, 40 odd years ago, having being an engineer or having a BCom degree itself was a was a big deal. It meant you would get a service or a whatever salaried job somewhere. That's the sort of mental models our parents have grown up with, and those are the mental models that are imposed on today's generation, right? So the economy has probably moved somewhere in 20 odd years, but very outdated models are being imposed on young adults, right? And one story, I'm battling with this myself. My first cousin who just gotten done with his, I think, what is that? BCA, Bachelor of Computer Application, right? Like a pseudo engineering sort of a degree. He is now learning Blender and like spending money on graphics cards and like whatnot. To his parents, he's playing a game, right? Like to his parents, he's probably just spending his time like rotating some objects on his computer all day, and they're extremely concerned. They're like, "Why don't you go to a big city, do an MBA, something, something?" Right? Like that's like this safest option, right? Like that they've heard around. Ki, "Arey, this guy did an MBA, so must be something there." But they do not get like let's say your AR, VR, metaverse, jazz, where things are headed, right? So I think this divide is real. I don't see instant solution. एक साइड मैरिज मार्केट का प्रेशर है, दूसरी साइड upskilling and where the economic opportunities lie. It's going to be a fun time for us marketeers to sort of figure out how to navigate this.
I want to talk about just the role heuristics and anecdotes play in this whole thing, right? Like, वो सारा, for example, I have a cousin. I mean, another cousin story. He grew up in a village near Pandharpur. Pandharpur is a taluka in Maharashtra, right? Like, it's not even a district. And his aspiration was to go to this university in the north, right, like in Punjab. I guess pretty easy to predict, say what university it is. And I was very curious कि यार इसको ये aspiration कहाँ से हुई है कि मुझे वहाँ जाना है. And it's a fairly expensive proposition. It's not like, and he has this anecdote that मेरा एक cousin गया, वो उसने वहाँ पे 4 साल गया, then he came to Bangalore. Now he's making some 8 lakh rupees. तो उसका हो गया तो मेरा भी हो जाएगा. सो इट्स अ वेरी एनेक्डोट ड्रिवन. द अदर थिंग इज दिस ह्यूरिस्टिक्स, राइट? लाइक जब मैं खुद IIM बैंगलोर गया था तो मुझे कोई आइडिया नहीं था क्या MBA है और क्या कंसल्टिंग है और क्या है बैंकिंग है. हम बस उठा के बैग लेके पहुंच गए कि भाई अभी हाँ 2 साल यहाँ पे बिताना है. और लाइक आई डोंट थिंक लाइक इवन पीपल हु वांट टू परसू MBA उनको पता है कि MBA क्या है. मुझे मुझे भी नहीं पता था, मतलब टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, राइट? इट वाज लाइक हाँ ये प्रोसेस है, कैट लिखना है, उसमें वो 3 सेक्शन है, हर सेक्शन में इतना परसेंटाइल आना चाहिए, फिर इंटरव्यू देना है, इंटरव्यू के टाइम सूट पहन के जाना है, फिर वाई MBA क्वेश्चन पूछा जाएगा, SOP के बारे में, लाइक इट्स ऑलमोस्ट लाइक अ फैक्ट्री काइंड ऑफ असेंबली मॉडल. और फिर तुम पहुंच गए वहां पे, और फिर वहां जाके फिर मुझे पता चला अच्छा ऐसा कुछ कंसल्टिंग होता है. और जो डे 0 पे लोग जाते हैं, लाइक द गॉड्स गिफ्ट टू मैनकाइंड, वो कंसल्टिंग में जाते हैं. फिर उसके बाद जो थोड़े लेस गिफ्टेड है वो मे बी आई बैंकिंग में जाते हैं. और लाइक देयर इज दैट हायरार्की देयर. बट इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग लाइक how heuristics, anecdotes, incentives are at play. And the system just, I mean, another realization we have had over last 18 months is the incentives are baked in so well that it is difficult to make any dent. Like, I mean, it takes a whole lot of effort to make any dent.